Welcome back to another episode of the Otter God Pod, where we talk about sobriety, spirituality, and everything in between. This week we have a very special episode. We've got Mr. Ryan Ross.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, dude, happy to be here.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. We've taken a couple weeks off yet again, but I promise you at some point we're going to get consistent. We're going to get rolling. We're building the plane in midair, and sometimes you get good results. Sometimes it takes a little bit.
Little turbulence,
but at the end of the day, we're having fun. We're having a good time. So, I'm super excited, man. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I actually spent last night, I was looking up a little bit of the videos that you've done, and I saw your recent pod with Kristen Day. I know Kristen. Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was great. That was our first episode in the studio. You're our second, and cool, man. Excited. Yeah. What do you want to talk about? Man. Did you spend all night just being like, what am I going to talk about?
We could talk about whatever you want. We could go a little bit into my story, and then we can expand on a couple of the cool things that I'm doing. Treatment, if you want, we can discuss treatment a little bit. The industry as it stands today, the demographic of Arizona. It's interesting what's going on out here. You know,
I love that, man. There's a lot of cool things that you're up to, man. You're a really busy guy, and so there's a lot of different things that I want to talk about. But I think you're right. Let's just get to know you a little bit better. Let's talk briefly on your story.
Yeah.
You know, maybe qualify yourself a little bit.
I can qualify myself.
You've been to prison.
I have been to prison. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, well.
My sobriety date is 2/14 of 18. We can take it way back, man.
Valentine's Day.
And there's a funny story behind that too. Yeah, I'll never forget it.
Arizona's birthday.
Yeah. It was man, it was a time. So going back, you know, I grew up in West Side Los Angeles, California, Santa Monica, Brentwood area. Fabulous family, man. You know, my parents, on paper, truly amazing. Like everything that you can imagine in an American dream, kid growing up, right? Yeah. Dad owned a successful business. Mom was a stay-at-home mother. Had a little brother. We were very close. It's interesting because when I look back at my life, say 12 and younger, I have a hard time memorizing. Yeah, I have a hard time remembering a lot of the stuff that happened, even though I know it was beautiful and it was good, right? So growing up, the earliest thing that I can remember is, you know, I was going to a private school. Education was always first and foremost in my family. My parents are a little bit older. My dad he's 76 now.
Wow.
And he had me when he was 49. And just to put that in context, I'm 28 years old.
Yeah.
Right. My mom was 9 years younger.
So he was in his late 60s when you graduated high school.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a different generation, right? I think having older parents, there's a lot of wisdom there, even though maybe they're not as involved as far as activities go when you're younger and throwing baseball with your dad and, you know, stuff like that. But I went to private school up until the age of about 11. And my dad at that time was diagnosed with head, neck, and lung cancer. And I remember distinctly the day that we sat down at the table and he told us about what was going on. And it was the four of us. My parents were recently divorced at that time for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And he had to go, there's a really great hospital in Houston, Texas called MD Anderson. Cancer treatment is top notch. Went out there and he was gone for about 3 to 4 months. And at that time, I remember he was pulling me from the private school I was in due to financial reasons because the cost of treatment was so expensive, right? So we're sitting at that table and it was just, the world got turned upside down, right? Not only does my dad have cancer and it's very bad at that point, my parents were recently divorced. I went to stay with my cousins in San Fernando Valley at the time. And that was cool. Hung out with my aunt, my uncle, came back home for a little bit when my dad was done with his treatment. And I remember when he walked in the door, and it was different. You know, he wasn't the man that I knew him to be. He had lost a lot of weight. He was very sucked up. He had lost a lot of his hair. Chemo, right? It's a killer in and itself. So that all happened. And that is when I feel like I really got derailed. Went out and lived with my mom about an hour outside the Los Angeles area in a suburb called Santa Clarita, California. Six Flags, right next to Six Flags.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you go a lot?
I did.
You're a roller coaster guy?
I am a roller coaster guy. Yeah. Anything, I'm an adrenaline junkie, right? I think a lot of us are.
Yeah.
So that was cool at first. But again, I was uprooted. I was in this large public school. Never, you know, the population at the school I went into at this time was 1,500, 2,000 kids. And I was coming from a private school education background where there was like 500 kids in our school, right? So had to meet new friends. And I was just lost, man. I was lost. I didn't know how to fit in. You know, I tried everything. Skateboarding, I tried gangs, I was looking to feel validated, and I was looking for that sense of camaraderie. And I just missed the mark on so many different things, right? So the apartment complex that my mom moved into when I was living with her, there was this kid next door, and he was a few years older than me, and I remember his name was DJ, and he was part of this cool little tagging gang at the time, and he kind of took me under his wing, and we just got into so much crap, man. You know, at that time, I remember I started to smoke marijuana, and it started there and it didn't end there, right? And a lot of gang violence that was occurring. It was interesting. I was going out to this group in Canyon Country all the time and kind of hanging out with them, again, just trying to fit in. And long story short, I got caught with an ounce of marijuana at school. And I believe this was freshman or sophomore year. And this was my first time really running into legal trouble, right? And I, at that time, got caught. I was taken down to Sylmar Juvenile Hall, and I was booked for possession for sales as an adolescent. I was like 13, 14 at the time. And daddy came to bail me out, right? You know, in hindsight's 2020, probably should have let me sit there for a little bit. But he came, went back to live with my dad back in Brentwood, Santa Monica area for a little bit, and it didn't stop there. So now, you know, even though I was doing the wrong things, I was uprooted from my family. I went out to Santa Clarita to live with my mom, got into a ton of trouble out there, and I was uprooted once again back to Brentwood, right? Santa Monica area at the time. Went into a public school out there, and it was the same thing, right? Same exact thing, looking to fit in. Started to get into trouble out there. And at that time, I was in the courts for my case in Santa Clarita, and my mom said, hey, I'm going to move to Oregon. Let me come with him. And the judge signed off on that. And it was called a interstate compact of probation. So I went out to Oregon, and in Oregon, so uprooted yet again, go out to Oregon, and I'm living in a really small community about an hour and a half outside of Portland. And my stepsister was there at the time. And this town, talk about 500 kids in a private school, there was probably 5,000 people in this entire town, right? And here I come.
A little bit of a change of pace.
Yeah, right? Huge change of pace. And I'm out here in Hood River now, and I think
Hood River,
right? And I think I'm Billy Badass, this kid coming from LA. You know, I'm with a gang and I'm selling marijuana.
Yeah, I got ounces.
I got tattoos at 14 years old, right? And end up in Hood River. And that was when I first got introduced into cocaine and started using cocaine pretty heavily, was going down to Portland, was really into the rave scene, a lot of EDM, a lot of dubstep at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just a party, man. And it was interesting because I was always a very smart kid and I took my education very seriously. If you asked me what I was going to do at the age of 7, 6 years old, I would tell you that I was going to go into investment banking, right? Because that was, and like you talk to a 6 or 7 year old and it's like, oh, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a doctor.
You know what I said? Dude, my mom saved it, but we had to do that thing in like second grade or third grade or something where it's just like we were like had construction paper and you had to cut out like an outline of like what you wanted to be and write about it. Yeah. I chose a garbage truck driver. Like literally I was just like cut out like a thing of a garbage truck driver. I had like big ambitions as a kid.
Yeah.
And you're over there like, I want to do quantum finance.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah. And I don't know. My parents came from a different generation where education was everything, man. Like when you look at that generation, access to information wasn't really there. Everyone went to school. Like if you wanted to do something in life, you went to school, right? And that's not so much the case anymore. There's a lot of people going down a lot of different avenues outside university.
Yeah, well, you can just watch YouTube and figure out a lot of things.
Everything.
These days. Yeah.
Everything, right? So, if you asked me at that age, I would have said, yeah, I'm going into investment banking. 2013 analyst class going to Goldman Sachs. I'm going to make VP by 26. It's going to be all good, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like that. It was very set at a young age.
How did that shift to 13, 14-year-old you with tattoos and you're living in Hood River?
Oh my gosh, man. I mean,
you're like, I'm going to be the leader of Hood River.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to run this town.
Yeah, I was just so lost.
Yeah.
Man, I was so lost and I was looking for acceptance and family and everything I knew. It didn't make a whole lot of sense anymore. And I always tell individuals, I never got high to hang out with you. I got high to hang out with Ryan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I had no identity. I was just jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah. Trying to find the identity.
Yeah. And I missed the mark, man, big time. So I'm in Hood River, start dabbling in cocaine, and I'm selling drugs. I was always very ambitious as a kid. And, I knew that I wanted to make a lot of money and I was very financially motivated. The problem is I didn't want to put in the hard work it takes to get there, right? And what's an easy way to do that? Well, selling drugs is definitely an easy way to do that. So we're in Hood River and we're starting to sell a good amount of drugs. And at that time, my mom and I were in an apartment near the river. And long story short, there were some kids that came into my house while my mom was home and stole some guns I had and stole some drugs I had. And I lost it, man. I was like, my mom was home. Something could have happened, whatever the case may be. So we go out into the boonies, a very small town. I was aware of who did the robbery. And we went out there and I felt like I had a point to make at the time and went into the house and got my stuff back and beat the kid up. And on the way out of the house, I thought it was a good idea to light a match and throw it in the house. And house didn't burn down or anything like that, but it did set fire. And I was on probation at the time. So I ended up getting caught and the probation officer referred me to what's called the Oregon Youth Authority. And Youth Authority is prison for adolescents. Right. And they come in and they take you from your parents, essentially. You're a ward of the state, right? Your parents no longer hold guardianship, even if they wanted to. So I get sent off to Bend, Oregon, and I am at a boys ranch called J Boys Ranch in Oregon. And I was there for about a year and a half. And I would say this is from about 16 to 18. And a couple months before my 18th birthday, I graduated and I went home to LA and I was doing good for some time. And then I got back into partying, man, got back into partying, had a group of friends. We were going out to UCSB, there was a party out there called Deltopia all the time. We would go out there and we were drinking and using a lot of cocaine, a lot of pills. And I met a girl. And I fell in love. And I think this was the first time in my life that I ever fell in love. And she played a huge part in my life for about the next 5 to 6 years, right? There was a lot of codependency involved. Unfortunately, she had her own past with heroin and OxyContin, and she ended up relapsing, and we started, I was like, OxyContin, what's this? You know, I had never really been a downer type of guy. It was always uppers for me. Let's party. And I tried this, and the second I tried it, I found what I had been looking for.
Yep.
Right. It was complete release, emotional shutdown, and we were using OxyContin for about 2 or 3 years. I was back in school at that time, and eventually the money ran out, right? The money ran out, and there was a lot of crimes being committed. And the dealer one day said, hey, you know, I'm out of OxyContin, but I have something called heroin.
Yep. It's cheaper.
Yeah, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper, and it's twice as strong. Do you want to try it?
That's the natural progression. Like everybody who ever like finds heroin starts with like pills, and then eventually it's like, well, the money runs out, and then here you go.
Yeah. And the second the use of heroin started, it was definitely a different environment. Man, things got really dark. There was many times I would sit in my room and just shut the blinds for weeks at a time. And in the interim, I'm selling drugs again to support my habit, right? So we're back out in Santa Clarita at the time, living with her mom, and took off for a little bit, and I went to a treatment center. I was honestly ready to kill myself. I have this distinct memory with my mom. I was driving home. Me and the girlfriend had gotten into a fight, and I was driving, and I was under the influence at this time, and I was ready to just crash my car into the barrier on the freeway. I was like, I cannot do this.
You know, it's crazy because I'm like hearing this story, and it's like I could pinpoint in my story as well. Like when I like, there's always that point where it's like, oh, like you cross that barrier, and it's like things get really dark and like get really lonely. And it's like there's a section of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous where it says, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact words, but it's like, as we became subjects of King Alcohol, King Heroin in this circumstance, like shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor of loneliness set in.
Yeah.
And I always thought like that was so poetic, but it like captures that feeling so well, because it's like you're just a slave, and it's like that chilling vapor of loneliness sets in, and it's like only people who know what that is can like truly understand what they were talking about.
Right.
And that's what you're describing here right now in your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a scary time. It was scary. I didn't know what to do, man. You know, my body was so physically dependent at the time. I had never experienced anything like that. I'm driving on the freeway, and I call my mom and I say, hey, you know, I'm ready to end it all. And I remember closing my eyes for about 15 seconds, just hoping that something happened, you know? And she convinced me. I was on the speakerphone with her, and she convinced me just to pull over and get some sleep. I woke up that next morning, and I decided that this was going to be my first round in treatment. And I went down to San Diego, a program called Sharp, a great program. And that was when I was introduced to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was introduced to what recovery was supposed to look like. But again, I'm so in love, right? I'm so in love with this girl. And I'm talking to her my entire time in treatment. She's in treatment at this time too, in a program in Santa Clarita. And under the advice of my therapist and clinical team, it was like, hey, you know, you do not want to be in a relationship right now. And looking back on it, I truly wish I listened to them.
Right.
You know, Because ultimately, when you go into treatment, every decision you're making for yourself is not working, right? When you land in treatment, you need to follow the guidance and advice of those around you.
Yeah, but you're still very codependent at
Very
this time.
sick,
Like
very codependent, very sick, right? So I'm down there in San Diego, and I'm so in love with San Diego, man. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but it's a total vibe. You got the beach, surfing every day.
Gaslight District. It's just, it's a vibe.
Yeah, it's a good time, man. And I'm down there, and I get really involved in the recovery community down there. And I went to my first sober living at the time, which was called Normal Heights Sober Living. Shout out to Normal Heights. Huge program, very high structure sober living, but they embodied a lot of the things I do today, right? Like they show you how to have fun in sobriety, which I think is huge, right?
But yeah, it's like, cause it's like you have to find a life worth living sober, or else it's just like, well, what's the point? It's like all this sucks, and I'm not having any sort of fun. Like, what's the point? I might as well just go be high and miserable.
And it was always a day with the boys. You know, we're going skydiving Saturday. Sunday, we're up early. We're going surfing. Monday, we're going hiking. Meanwhile, we're running 12-step groups in the house. We're very involved in the community. We're of service, right? All these things. And that was my first experience at recovery. And I'll never forget it because I was so happy. But that codependence was a motherfucker, man. It was tough, you know? And I ended up going back to the girlfriend. I was like, all right, I'm out. Went back down to Santa Clarita. And at that time, we decided that we were going to pick up and move to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Okay. And we relapsed, right? About 4 or 5 months clean at the time. We ended up relapsing, and I'm in Phoenix. And back to heroin, started selling drugs again out here. And that cycle continued for a few years. We were living with her mom out here, and I was back in school, continuing my education, but just terribly miserable. And
when did you get, like, your 2018, where are we at right now?
We're
like,
in about 16, 15. So I'm like 19 at the time.
And so what did it look like right when you decided, like, February 14th, 2018? Like, what led you to that point? So where you got now?
Okay. So February 14th of 18, I'm getting high in Phoenix all the time, everything like that, and selling drugs. I ended up catching a case out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And
shout out Maricopa County.
Maricopa County, man.
They'll get you.
Yeah, come on vacation, leave on probation.
Oh, yeah.
And February 14th of 18, I'm in the casino. And
which casino? Just curious.
Talking Stick. We're at Talking
Of course.
Stick. Yeah. And we get home, it's about 3, 4 a.m. And I recall having the big screen in my room with the cameras around the house. And the cameras just started going out one by one. And I thought I was losing internet connection for a second. I thought no big deal. And about 20 seconds later, a tank drove through the wall at the house I was renting in Tempe. And the jig was up, man. Yeah. I crawled in the attic trying to evade that and just fell right through the drywall. And SWAT team was right below me. And they were all laughing like the kid thinks he's slick, right?
Yeah.
So there's a group of us in the house, and I get pulled in. I had 7 warrants out for my arrest for different things I had done. And this was just how careless I was at the time. There were situations where I was running into pawn shops and saying, hey, can I look at this necklace? And they would say, sure, but we need your ID first. No problem. Here's my ID. And it was actually my real valid ID.
And you were just taking off.
And I was just taking off, knowing full well that this was going to catch up to me at some point.
Yeah.
But I did not care.
Yeah.
I did not care.
That sounds like when I take Xanax, I do shit like that.
Right.
And then it's just like, when then you look back, you're like, what was I thinking?
Right.
Yeah.
So there was all these things that came about. And the reason they had raided the home at that time was there was an individual, a young man in Scottsdale. And I sold some drugs to an individual that sold some drugs to this young man. And he ended up passing away from a heroin overdose. And when someone dies, the law looks at it very differently. and they execute immediately, right? So there was wiretaps. There was a good amount of surveillance that went on for about 2 weeks. And they came into the house that night on the 14th, and they arrested me and arrested the entire group that I was with. This wasn't the day that my life changed forever. It was a few months after that, and I'll get to that in a second. But sat in county jail for about a year and a half, and initially I was facing some very serious, well, they're all serious charges, but up front it was negligent homicide, and because an individual had passed away, on top of the sales and the gun charges and everything like that. And the original pleas that I was being offered at the time, 20 to 35 years.
Right.
You know, some heavy numbers. And I thought that my life was just done. I remember sitting in my cell trying to comprehend everything that happened. And a lot of it wasn't making sense because I was still very sick at the time. And I sat in county jail for about a year and a half going through the court proceedings. It was a pretty big case, and there were some legal discrepancies in the case. Ended up getting an attorney at that time. And going back to my family was very checked out at this point. They were no longer supporting me. They were rarely talking to me. You know, my dad's very old school, and I think he considered it a weakness, addiction, and alcoholism. He was like, why can't you stop? Mm-hmm. Psychologically, are you a weak individual? I said, Dad, I can't. You know, I can't stop. Going through the court proceedings, there was this lady in the back of the courtroom, and it was always closed court. Every time I had a court appearance, she was there. My family wasn't there. I had no friends or acquaintances that were there. The girlfriend I thought I loved so much wasn't there, but there was this lady in the back of the room, and I always wondered who she was. Come to find out, she was the mother of the young man that passed away. She came to visit me one day, and I was filled with so much hatred at myself, at life in general. I was ready to hang it up. I was a volcano ready to explode at any minute. If you looked at me wrong, whatever the case may be, you know. And I had never felt this type of love and compassion from an individual before, especially someone, I put myself in her shoes, I think I would hate. Yeah. I would hate me so much if I took my baby boy from me, right? And you know, I don't want to say she understood based on our limited conversations. You know, she said she forgave me, and now I was a very young man, and she wanted me to pay it forward as much as possible. That is the day that my life changed forever. I came back to my cell, and it was just different, man. I had a spiritual experience at that point. I don't know what it was. I think it was just love, compassion. So, long story short, ended up retaining legal counsel, private legal counsel, and the pleas getting lower over that year and a half. I sat in county. It went from 8 to 15 open plea, 4 to 8 open plea, and then finally I signed a stipulated 4-year prison term, and went off to prison. And when I landed in prison, it was definitely a shock, but I knew what I had to do, right? And this is growth, this era that I was in at that point. I wasn't interested in the politics. I wasn't hanging out with your guys and your drama. Leave me alone. I got a job in the library. I educated myself. I read as many books as I could. I worked out every day. And that's what I did for 4 years continuously. And I had a plan when I got out, right? Now, even though I had this experience at Normal Heights Sober Living, and it was my first experience in recovery, there was a lot of growth that occurred in prison, but when I got out, I think that I was still spiritually bankrupt, right? Because physically I was there, mentally I was there, and I was sober, but I wasn't recovering at that point, right? So I got out, and I was working in contracting for a little bit, and I got a plumbing job, and I was in a sober living home at the time. And I thought it was very interesting, and I ended up getting an opportunity to manage a house, and then shortly after, I was a director of an entire program, and I oversaw about 12 homes at that time. And I learned as much as I could about this industry, right? I knew that I wanted to be in this industry. I knew that I have a passion for helping people and seeing people grow. But I'll tell you what I'm really passionate about. Yeah. I'm really passionate about helping other individuals find their passion. That's what I really love, man.
It's a different vibe. It's like you can tell just by having a conversation with somebody, like the way they talk about something, if it's something that they truly like care about, like it's something that they truly love. Yeah. Or if it's just like something they're knowledgeable in, there's a palpable difference. You can see it in their eyes where it's just like, this is this person's like, this is what turns them on.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's flipping burgers or washing cars, whatever the case. I love seeing people fired up. Yeah. Right. Like I have this buddy who owns an auto detailing business, and he goes through all these cool, this sprayer and this Windex is used for these reasons.
And they love it.
And they love it.
And it's like, bro, no matter what you're doing, it's like they do it extremely well, because no matter what it is, you can do something at an extremely high level.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what it is. And it's like, there's an elite tier of like everything. Yeah. And it's like the people who are just like, this is my thing.
Right.
It's like, I polish wood in such a way that it's the best way to polish wood.
Yeah.
And you're like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love seeing people fired up about that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever it may be. So, was with this company for about a year and a half. Again, learning as much as I could about the industry. And I was always educating myself. And I still do that to this day. I think we're always learning, right? Yeah. Business is ever changing, especially in this industry, behavioral healthcare. Yeah. And worked for several different companies in different capacities, whether compliance or zoning or whatever the case may be. And decided to jump out and got the ball rolling on my own sober livings, man. You know, and I had developed a lot of relationships in the interim, and I knew that I wanted to do something different. I really love the experiential side of things. You know, I think the 12 steps is always a great foundation. How do we expand?
Yeah.
Right.
How do you build on top of the foundation? It's like, you can have a solid foundation, but it's like, you got to build something on it.
Right. You know, going back to holistic wellness, physical activity, camaraderie, culture, those are things that are important. And, you know, I know what worked for me, and that's always high structure environments. That's where Ryan flies, right? Because idle hands are the devil's play, right?
Yeah.
It's not a good situation. So got my first house and got my second house, and then got involved with some partners, and here we are at Rockview.
Right.
Man. And we're looking at doing some really cool and creative things. Again, learning in the process, right? And one thing that I love is, again, expanding, right? We're going to take what works. We know it works. I don't really feel like there's a need to reinvent the wheel by any means.
Right.
But let's get creative. And I've never really considered myself a creative individual, but that's kind of the era I'm in right now.
Yeah.
Where I'm
creative phase.
Very creative, future forward thinking, right? That's what I love to discuss and talk about, and just some different gaps we see in the industry. And I know we had a conversation about this the other day. I think it's something that we've both seen. And
it's like, and to piggyback off of that, right? Because you touched on it. We did have a conversation, and it's like, anybody, it doesn't matter if you're in the industry or not. It's like, if you've been to a treatment center, then went to an outpatient program and lived in a sober living for any amount of time, it's like you see very similar paths always happening, right? It's like somebody has a spiritual experience, their life starts to change, they get some clean time, they go into the treatment industry, they want to work, you know, they want to give back.
They're passionate about it.
And then what happens? What happens around that 1 year mark? what do we see? We see a lot of burnout. We see a lot of people getting jaded, and we see a lot of people who it started out as a passion project. That started out as, oh, this, I want to give back. I want to help as many people as possible. I want to be that person that somebody remembers when they leave treatment and they go on to rebuild their lives. But then somewhere along the way, you see it more often than not, that all sets in. It's like, it's very hard to find, people in treatment as like BHT, stuff like that a year, 18 months, 2 years in, they're as excited about it as when they were when they showed up.
Yeah. And I think it's for a lot of the reasons that you just touched on. Attrition is ridiculously high in this industry. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who are very good at what they do, and they jump from one company to the next company to the next company. And sometimes they leave the industry as a whole, right? Yeah. And I keep going back to the question of, why is this happening? Are there financial reasons? Do they lose their passion? I think this industry in general, and I hate to generalize, doesn't take care of their employees, man. To say, just to be fully transparent about it. And you're talking about individuals, clients always come first, right? But what we seem to forget is the employees that are now working for us were clients 6 months ago.
Yeah. Right.
And when attrition is high, efficacy tends to drop, generally speaking, right? A lot of the times, based on my conversations with individuals, they don't feel very secure. There's no health insurance.
There's a very low capped ceiling.
Yes.
Too. They see no possible way to put in their time, work their way through, and eventually get to that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, you come in as a BHT, you'll stay as a BHT. You may be case manager, but it's like it narrows.
Right.
There's no real hey, you can do this as a career.
Yeah. And I think addicts and alcoholics naturally were very ambitious people.
Yeah.
In my experience. Right. So there's that ceiling, which you discussed. There's a lack of security. Long hours. You mentioned burnout. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
Right. I do think passion can be cultivated, but I've also seen it where people can lose their passion just as easily. They're not taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what stage you are in your recovery. You have to take care of yourself.
Well, and I think a big part of this too, and I've never worked in treatment in any capacity myself, but it's like, I know enough people who have, and one thing that I observe a lot is when you're in recovery and you get some time and you go back to work for a treatment center, that line can get so easily blurred where now it's like the codependency and stuff, it switches. So now it's like, you're so concerned about saving everyone else and you're hyper focusing on all of these people in treatment and trying to help them. And then you're not doing anything for yourself to work your own program or to work on yourself. And I see that a lot where it's it's very easy for an alcoholic and addict to just oh, this person has a problem, so I'm just going to pour all my attention into that and then ignore everything that's going on in my own life till I get burnt out and I get jaded and I wonder why I'm upset all the time and I wonder why I'm so tired. But it's because I'm not working on myself. I'm just delaying all of that just so I can focus on other people to avoid working on myself.
Very well said. Yeah, very well said. And I think it's a continued journey of growth, whether you are an employee in recovery or you're a client in recovery. Right?
Yeah.
We've had some very interesting conversations lately about an employee-owned treatment center and employee-owned programs, right?
Right.
This is not an uncommon thing in other industries. I haven't seen much of it in the behavioral healthcare space. How do we incentivize individuals to come to work fired up every day? How do we give them the security we need or they need?
Mm-hmm.
And the growth potential, right? I think that is a huge component.
Yeah.
Because people at the end of the day, when they stop growing and they flatline, man, disinterest comes right after it.
Yeah, man. And it's dude, I like I said, I don't work in the industry myself, but it's I come from a sales background. And it's there's nothing worse than grinding it out on the phones day in and day out, making your dials, whatever, filling someone else's pipeline. And then when spots open up for account executives, they bring in outside people. They're not promoting within. You're not getting the commission tiers. And it's just that kills all the ambition, everything you want. It kills it. and it pigeonholes you until you just bounce around. Right. It's the same thing. It's like, oh man, like I wanted to get fast tracked here. I hit all my KPIs. They didn't promote me. Now I'm just going to go sell something else. Right. Now I'm just going to go do this. It's the same thing with BHTs. It's like most people, if you ask them, they've worked for multiple treatment centers, like you said. They like, you know what I mean? Because it's like, I love this treatment center. I love this vision. It sounds good. They get there. 8 months later, they're pigeonholed. There's no real like things for advancement. So they just go to the next one because they get sold on that and they get sold on that. Right. And the whole while they're working in behavioral health. They have no health insurance. Right. They've got like no benefits, no retirement plans. It is crazy.
Yeah. And peer support was one of the best things that ever happened to this industry. And it's been around forever, right? And it's nothing new. But the idea that an individual with shared life experience can walk you through what recovery is supposed to look like and be there to mentor you and to hold you accountable on all these things. They need to grow aligned, right? Yeah. With the program, with the clients. So I think if we can create a community and a culture where everyone continues to grow, I think you'll see high efficacy. Yeah. I think you'll see better outcomes. Yeah. And I think you'll just see people really fired up and giving it their all.
Well, yeah, when you're able to buy in, and this is what I like, because I loved listening to your story because it's just like there was pieces of it like that were so in alignment with just kind of like where I'm at in my life right now, where it's just like, this last time around, I have a friend that owns sober living homes, right? And this last time around, I completely fucked my shit up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I burnt it to the ground, dude. I had nowhere left to go. I had my shitty 2010 Chevy Cobalt and $1,000 in my pocket, and that was it, dude.
That's better than me sometimes.
Yeah, I had nothing, right? And so I'm like, dude, I got to get back into treatment, right? And so I come back and I'm in sober living, and at this time he's got 3 houses, right? And I reconnect with him and I'm living in one of his houses. And then, a couple months goes by, he opens up a couple more and there's an opportunity to manage one. And it's like, what I found is that I understood the vision, right? I understood what he wanted to do and I fully believed in it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. And so it's like, I attach that, right? And then next thing you know, it's like multiple houses doing all this stuff. But it's like, it's very easy when you have a passion to do something and there you also buy into the core values of belief of someplace, right? When you can fully buy in and invest in it and say, this is where I see myself growing. I know they'll take care of me and I'll take care of them. And it's like that kind of environment, if you put that into a treatment space, I do think you'll see higher retention rates. You won't see as many people looking for the next opportunity. And it's like the quality of care will skyrocket when people feel secure and they don't feel like their time is running out. They're just biding their time. That if their car breaks down or God forbid they break an arm and they can't afford the whatever, it's like those are all the things that are running through your mind when you're not financially secure. You don't have health insurance. You don't have all of these things. And it's just like when you have all that set and you're comfortable and you fully believe that you can grow and thrive within an organization, the quality of your work reflects that.
100%.
100%.
I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and he's worked at various treatment centers here in the Valley, and he called me very discontent. He was like, man, I don't know what to do. I'm not happy here. I'm losing passion. I'm thinking about switching to a different industry. And for a myriad of reasons, right? But I think that lack of security is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's one thing believing in a vision, buying into a vision and a model and everything like that. It's different if it's on paper.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, I didn't read it. I saw it on TikTok, dude. And it was like, they did a study with these rats and it's so crazy. I just watched this the other day and it's so in line with what you're saying, right? Where they put these rats in water. And after 15 minutes of them treading water, they would drown and they would die. And then they put these rats back in water. And right at the exhaustion point where the rat was about to fail around the 15-minute mark, they picked it up out of water and let it rest for 60 seconds. And then they put that rat back in water and it treaded water for 60 hours after
Isn't that
because
interesting?
it believed that at some point something was going to come pick it up out of the water.
Right.
And it was like, that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
It's just like when you don't believe that you'll be taken care of, when you don't believe that like at the end of the day, like you'll be all right and you'll be secure, you're at that 15-minute mark.
Right.
But it's like if someone comes in and they say, no, this is possible, like whatever, 60 hours.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like you can't perform well when you're constantly thinking about everything. And it's like, life happens and like things happen, but it's like when you feel secure and you feel like you're going to be taken care of, there's a serenity, there's like a peace in your life that reflects in everything that you do.
Yeah.
And the quality of that person's life, you raise the quality of people's lives and the quality of their work will reflect that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you nailed it on the head. Life is life, right? There's things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
Completely. But making the individual feel secure and passionate, so they can keep trucking along, very important, and guess what? Everything on paper could be perfect. I still feel very unsecure every day.
Yeah.
I wake up a lot of days with this knot in my stomach, like this could go upside down or this could go upside down, right? But
am I on the right path?
Yeah.
Am I doing the right things? Is what I'm doing today going to get me closer to where I want to go? Like those are things that always happen, but
join the club.
yeah.
Right? Like I don't care who you are. Everyone has those feelings of self-doubt.
Just doubt.
Yeah.
Man. You're like, is this really like,
But I think there's something to be said about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Dude,
right?
Literally live uncomfortably.
That's where growth happens.
Live uncomfortably.
That's where growth happens.
Be uncomfortable and do it anyways.
Right.
Look at something and say, there's a very high chance that I'm going to fail and do it anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Edison, man. People only hear about the wins.
Yeah.
You never hear about the 1,000 times he failed.
Yeah.
Right? Making the light bulb.
And it's like, bro, so you're at step 1 and you analyze everything that could go wrong so you don't do anything.
Right.
Or you just say, hey, this all could go wrong, but I'm going to do something. Even if you only take 2 steps and then you fail, your baseline is now 2 steps farther than where you were if you just said, I could fail, so I'm not going to do it.
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm an analyzer, man. We got these DISC assessments done on us and very strong analyzer. I will think things through 10 times over, and a lot of times this stops me from executing.
I always tell people, I'm like, dude, build the plane in the air. It's like, get that thing off the runway and then it's gonna become very apparent once you're already flying what you're missing, and then you got to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm very, very firm. I'm like, pull the trigger. Yeah. It's like make some sort of progress, and just like it's easier when you have momentum to spot, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you're fixing it in real time as you're moving, instead of just being like, how can I set this up to mitigate failure? But you never start.
That's me, right?
You know what I mean?
And I'm worried about the exposure over here and the liabilities over here and all the what ifs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I have partners who are executors at their core, right? Yeah. They are builders at their core, and they just pull the triggers on things, just like you were saying. And a lot of the times, we get in heated debates, and that's okay, right? That's what partnerships are for. I always tell individuals, like, I do not want a partner that sees eye to eye on with the same things that I see, because you need individuals who are going to watch your blind spots at the end of the days, right? Yeah. And that's what I do for them, and vice versa. Yeah. So I think it's a happy medium, but I definitely understand the analysis paralysis.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I do have a little segment that I want to do, because we're kind of getting towards the end of the episode here, but I set something up.
Okay.
I set something up, and I think this will be cool. And while I'm pulling this up, I just want to let you guys know, look at the studio. This is my city office, Chandler, Arizona. It's a co-working space, as well as the podcast studio is available. Jay and Brian, they're great. This is their studio. So I will have their information in the link in the bio. So if you guys want to start your own podcast, you guys reach out to me at least once a week. I get a message as someone asking me, what does it take to start a podcast? Blah, blah, blah. This is a great place to start, is finding a studio to host it. And so if you guys are interested, I'll have their information and you can take a look. But I have this little wheel. I have a wheel of different topics, and we're going to spin it. And just, for 2-3 minutes, we'll just pick your brain on whatever it lands on. Okay?
Let's do it.
And the wheel is brought to you by my city office here in Chandler, Arizona. Let's see. Your 1 to 3 year goal.
1 to 3 year goal.
Let's talk about your 1 to 3 year goal.
Okay. So we want to scale appropriately, right? I think that inundation has the potential to kill more businesses than starvation. So again, going back to scaling appropriately, but I think what we want to do is build a culture and a community around the high structure sober livings and the treatment center and the outpatient. Culture is at the forefront of our program, right? Just building that family-like environment.
The sense of belonging.
Correct.
The sense of like, I'm bought into this. I belong here.
Correct.
Something that people can identify with.
Yeah.
It's not just a treatment.
No.
Because
it's a movement.
Yeah. You touched on it in your story. It's like, as alcoholics and addicts, we have a spiritual hole in our lives that we just try everything to fill it. And it's like that sense of belonging, that sense of identity. That's, if you can capture that and do it well, that's what people want to be a part of.
Right. And I think, we're always growing and learning. I learn so much about this industry every day. I'd be lying to you if I told you I had it all figured out, right? I don't. But that's the fun part, man. So just the culture, the community, the outcomes, the efficacy, all very important to us. Obviously it needs to be a profitable
and touch a little bit more too on the treatment center.
Yeah.
We haven't talked a whole lot about it. Rockview.
Yeah, Rockview.
Passion project.
It is a passion project, man. It really ties into the high structure homes in the lakes. Rockview is a gorgeous property up north off the I-17 Carefree, kind of like Northwest Scottsdale. And we're going to do a lot of the traditional modalities, right? So 12-step base, clinical is going to be fabulous. But again, I live in the experiential, right? Mm-hmm. How can we expand on it? I think CBT and DBT and trauma-informed therapy, these are all great things. Root cause analysis, right? Like we need to get to the bottom of why you're doing what you're doing. Step 1, right? Showing individuals how to have fun in sobriety, getting them intact with the culture, the community, the camaraderie, all those things. And we're going to have a phase system. So you're going to phase down from Rockview into our phase 2 homes and into our phase 3 homes and so on and so forth. The language shows that generally speaking, you want to keep someone in your care for about a year, right? Like that seems like the sweet spot. So we want to build out the full continuum, minus detox, but eventually, hopefully we can get into detox, because I think another issue that a lot of treatment centers have is they only specialize in one part of that continuum, whether it's outpatient or residential or sober living or detox. And you have to have great referral partners, but you lose track. And there's something to be said about an individual that's early in recovery, having to constantly make those switches from one program to the next program. You have new staff, you have new clinical team, you have new medical team.
And again, the uncertainty. It's like my first time in treatment, I had no idea what IOP, PHP. I'm like intensive outpatient. I'm like, what is this? And then it's like, and then a sober living home. And you're right. The IOP's by a different center, but then you're going to be living in this guy's sober living house. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah.
It's very confusing. And it just adds that fight or flight. You're not comfortable. You don't feel secure.
Right. And right now we're really focusing on how we can incentivize our employees or our team members, right? Mm-hmm. Potentially our partners, whatever the case may be, to get bought in, to get them fired up, so they're spitting fire every day with these individuals in treatment. So they're showing up to work and they're just killing it, man. And we don't have to worry so much about losing them down the line or worry about how they're doing as individuals, whether it's their home life balance or whatever the case may be, making sure that they're compensated appropriately, right? I think the livable wage here in Arizona right now, don't quote me on this, I think it's $24.30. The average treatment center here in Phoenix, Arizona is paying roughly $18. And that's with no kids, right? So making sure compensation's there, making sure the security is there, 401ks, health insurance, everything like that. Let's build a career, a community, and a culture. Mm-hmm. And, I want to see the efficacy soar and I want to see the outcomes there. Another thing we're really going to work on is how do we bring this into our partner treatment centers, right? And really show them investing in the importance of investing into their team, right? Not to say that treatment centers aren't doing this, but to show that performance is going to increase and outcomes are going to increase. And we can skin this financially. There's a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
So those are some of my goals over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That was a great episode, dude. I'm glad you stopped by.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, maybe just take a little bit. I always like doing this. Anybody who's watching that's just like struggling, maybe they related to your story a little bit, maybe they're just lost, confused. They have no idea what to do, where they're going. I mean, do you have any words of encouragement or advice for them? Or
I think you need to pick up the phone. Everyone's rock bottom looks different, right? You have to, the vulnerability that comes with being vulnerable, super scary. You have to put yourself out there and truly get in the middle of the pack. I know that's what I did. And there's a lot of individuals in this space who we're of service people. That's what we do. We can only keep what we have by giving it back, right? So I think it's just being proactive. Everyone's rock bottom looks different. It truly does, man. But I will tell you from personal experience, I did not think at one point that I was going to make it. And if you told me that I was going to live the life that I live today, I would have told you, you're out of your mind, right? I can't believe was it Tuesday at 10 a.m. and I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine talking sobriety for a living, right? Like everything is good, man. You know, it could be a lot worse. So yeah, man, I think you just got to reach out.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, thank you, man, for stopping by. We really do appreciate it. Guys, as we wrap up here, obviously, shout out Plugged In Recovery, sponsors of the pod. If you or somebody you love are struggling, you're looking for a structured environment to get your life back on track, we have sober living homes, male and female, all across the valley. You could always give us a call, 602-919-4242, or visit www.azsober.com. And again, this is my city offices in Chandler, Arizona on Germain and Cooper.
Okay.
And it's a co-working space as well as a full production studio for rent. So if you guys are interested, give Jay and Brian a call as well. They're great guys. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
this is awesome.
We'll see you guys next episode. I don't want to say next week. It might not be next week. It might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, but we'll see you next episode.
Busy guy.
Big things happening. Love it. Thank you guys so much. Bye.